Today's video is sponsored by Kunai Threads. Whether it be a playmat, a shirt, or even a pickleball set, Kunai Threads has you covered. Click the link in the description and use code Kunai Christmas for 20% off your entire order. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get better than 20% off everything. Thank you, Kunai Threads, for sponsoring this video. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Johnny TCG video. I'm Johnny TCG, and I am happy to see you here today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a new leader from OP09 Purple Black Luffy. I've been having a ton of fun with this leader. I say that often, but I really do mean it. The purple black combination is really interesting to play with. This deck has ramping abilities, it has some big bodies, and it allows for some very unique plays that I think you might find interesting as well. In today's video, we're going to be doing a deck profile. We're going to be doing a giveaway for a custom Purple Black Luffy leader. Stay tuned for that. And then, of course, we've got games on the sim against some meta-relevant matchups. We've got Purple Luffy, we've got Shanks, we got Doflamingo. You're going to want to stick around for those. For those that don't know, Black Purple Luffy is an OP09 leader with 4 life and 5,000 power. He has 2 effects, which we love a leader that has 2 effects. Effect number 1 is Don times 1. All of your characters get +1 cost. This is really helpful in the Doflamingo matchup, in the Lucci matchup, just because it's going to make your opponent have to work a little harder to remove some of your bodies from the board. His second ability is Activate Main once per turn. When you return 2 or more Don to your Don deck from your field, you may set up to 1 Don from your Don deck as active and then 1 as rested. This ability allows you to take advantage of Don that you've already used, so ramping that extra Don as active is really helpful. It can be used late game to leave a Don up for Gum Gum Giant event, or you can attach it to your leader and now you have a Don for your leader ability. We'll talk about more as the deck profile goes on and in the games about just how helpful this leader ability is. There's not really a ton of buzz around this leader. I think a lot of people think he's cool, but just he's not quite there yet. And I definitely see where they're coming from. While I do think he can contend with any deck, he doesn't always feel the most consistent. Unfortunately, our Gecko Moria plays don't always feel amazing, and I feel like that's what kind of holds this deck back. But that's enough general yapping. Let's get into the deck list. Starting off, we have 4 Mr. 2 Clays from EBO1. His on play allows you to ramp a Don as active, and when attacking, he gets to copy the power level of one of your opponent's characters. This is great on turn 2 if you're at 4 Don and don't have a Roronoa Zoro. I really like this play just because it continues to help you to ramp, and then also he can potentially become a viable swing the next turn. He also is pretty good late game, as if he's in the trash, you can bring him back out with Gecko. Then you have a body that might be annoying for your opponent to deal with, especially if he's able to copy the power level of a 10 cost Blackbeard, for example. Next up, we have 2 of the Gear 5 10 cost Luffys. This Luffy is really good in this deck. What we really like about him is the fact that on the turn after we play him, we're still going to be at 5 Don. That's how quickly you're able to ramp back up with our leader ability and the Gear 5 Luffy's ability. While he is mainly a late game finisher that you're hopefully using to go for game, if you get him out early, a lot of decks will have trouble dealing with him. But for me, I mostly use him as a late game finisher. We're running 4 Black Maria, a 3 cost 2000 power 2k. With the ability of Activate Main, you may set up to 5 Don from your Don deck as rested, and then at the end of your turn, you return Don from your field to your deck to equal the amount of Don on your opponent's field. Now, when you do this on turn 1, if you're on the even curve, you can actually technically ramp a Don, combining her with your leader ability. That's when you'd mostly play her, or the turn after you play the Gear 5 Luffy. Those are the 2 main situations in which you would use her. Otherwise, she's mostly just going to be a 2k. Next, we have 3 of the new Sanji from OP09. This card is made for this deck. 7 cost, 7,000 power, and 1k counter, which is very nice. On play, you may return 1 or more Don to your Don deck. This character gains Rush, and you get to rest one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 6 or less. This is perfect to rest a blocker and go for game or apply pressure to board. I think this card is really strong in this deck, and it's a must play. Next, we've got 4 of the OP09 Law Searcher. Just a simple 1 drop, 1000 counter. Look at the top 4 for a Heart Pirates or a Straw Hat. Choose one that's a cost 2 or more, so you can't take Gum Gum Giant, unfortunately. But it's great turn 1 play, looking for the pieces you'll need for later on in the game. 4 cost 5,000 power Frankie blockers from OP09. This Frankie works very well with our leader ability. On play, you may return 2 Don from your Don deck and then trash 1 card from your hand. Then you draw 2 cards. Now, of course, with our leader ability, this Don minusing doesn't actually mean anything to us because we get to ramp one of those Don back as rested and then one as active. So sometimes that ramping as active can be really helpful. This is probably our best target off of the Gecko Moria play. Bringing this back, using his ability to return to Don, getting both of those Don back, one as active, and then also doing some card draw is really helpful, especially late game. And then if we give our leader one Don, he becomes a 5 cost and therefore can't be bounced back to our hand from our opponent's 4 cost Trafalgar Law if we're playing a blue deck, for example. 2 cost Beppos from OP09. This is a 2k counter for the most part, but setting him up early isn't a terrible idea either. Beppo has the ability of once per turn during your turn, when a Don is returned from your field to the Don deck, give up to your leader plus 1000 power for the rest of the turn. This is really good. I wish it was for during your opponent's turn too and not just your own turn, but that's why we only run him at 2 and sometimes decide to keep him as a 2k because that 1000 boost isn't really a game changer for the most part. It's just a nice thing on the side. This is a good target to bring back with Gecko Moria for your 2 cost and lower spot. If you don't have the Law Searcher, then I think this is your next best play. Sometimes it might even be your best play. We're running it at 2 and I think that's a fair number. Some people aren't even running him at all, and I don't think they're crazy for not. One of the MVPs of this deck would be Roar Noah Zoro from OP09. 3 cost, 5000 power, no counter, but that's alright. His on playability requires you to return 2 Don from your field to your Don deck, then set 1 Don from your Don deck as active. Now, this doesn't make sense in any other deck besides Purple Black Luffy, because with Purple Black Luffy's ability, you're going to be able to set those 2 Don you returned as active and rested. Therefore, you ramped Don as active. And in this process, you turned one of your rested Don as active as well. So then you can swing 7,000 on your second turn. So if you're at 3 Don, you play this, return 2, and you can actually swing 7,000 with your leader. This is really good in like the Shanks matchup when you want to apply some early pressure to your opponent. This is definitely a 4 of, in my opinion at least. We're running 3 of the 9 cost Secret Rare Luffys from OP09. This card is a great card to ramp into and get out early to apply some pressure on your opponent. With his on play, you return 1 or more Don to your Don deck, use 2 to get your leader ability, then you get to draw a card and then get rush as well. It's really nice to get that card draw as the game goes on, and then a 10,000 power rusher is really strong. I definitely think there's an argument for 9 cost starter deck 4 Kaido to fit somewhere in this deck. I'm not sure if maybe we take out 1 or 2 Luffys and put 1 or 2 Kaidos in or whatnot, but that is also another option as well. Probably going to be much cheaper. I don't think you can go wrong with starter deck 4 Kaido. Next we have 4 Usohachis, the 3 cost 3000 power 2k from starter deck 18. Nothing crazy here. We're mostly using him as a searchable 2k, and then late in the game, if we want to go for lethal, we can play him down, and if we have 8 or more Don, we get to rest one of our opponent's 5 cost or less characters. This is a great effect late in the game, but for the most part, that's the only time you're going to be using him. We're running 4 Onamis from starter deck 18 as well. I really like Onami. She is a decent target to play off of Gecko Moria if you don't maybe have a Frankie in your trash. She doesn't require you to return any Don to your Don deck, but she has the same ability as Frankie. Trash 1 card from your hand and then draw 2. This is decent, especially late game when we're looking for our big bodies. This pairs very nicely with a Gecko Moria play when you're at 8 Don. You can establish a blocker, you can do some card cycling from your hand, hopefully find more big bodies. She is only at 2000 power, which means she's not going to be a threat offensively and can oftentimes be easy to remove, but still a good play off the Gecko, and I think having 4 is pretty good. If you told me you ran her maybe at 2 or 3, I would hear you out though. We're running 4 OP06 Gecko Moria, the 8 cost 9000 power body that everybody knows and loves. With him, we're able to bring back a 4 cost and a 2 cost from our trash. Now, there's no real consistent way to fill up our trash with this deck. We don't run any cards that really help do that. And so sometimes your Gecko Moria plays aren't going to be as ideal as they are in other decks. Sometimes you might even delay a Gecko play just because you might literally not have anything in the trash to bring back. You'll see in one game where I trash a Frankie as counter, even though that wasn't enough to get me out of the swing, just so that my Gecko had something to bring back the next turn. That's just the way it goes sometimes. sometimes with this deck. At the end of the day though, comboing Gecko with a Frankie or Onami is really good. If you have a Trafalgar Law Searcher in your trash too, that is just icing on the cake. That is a very nice turn. We're only running 2 of the starter deck 14 5 cost 6,000 power Sanjis, but if you told me you ran 3, I wouldn't call you crazy. This card goes really hard in this deck. Being able to ramp into it and then KO whatever your opponent played on their 4 or 5 Dawn turn is such a good feeling. It's a strong body that's annoying to get rid of for your opponent. Unfortunately, you can't bring him back with Gecko Moria, so once he's dead, he's kind of dead, but he can be really helpful. He can help in the late game. He can help in the early game. He's just a great card. I'm a big fan, and how could you not like that artwork too? I'm running 2 of the 2-cost event Gum Gum Lightning. This is very similar to Sheepsworn, which a lot of people run, but for now, I think I kind of like this one better. It's Activate Main, Dawn -2, which you'll be able to get back with your leader ability. KO one of your opponent's characters with a power of 6,000 or less. This is perfect into the Dofi matchup. Getting rid of a Boa or a Weevil for only 2 Dawn is a great deal in my opinion. It even has the trigger of setting a Dawn from your Dawn deck as active, which depending on the situation might be really helpful. Last but not least, we have the new OP09 Gum Gum Giant. Every purple deck basically that Ken is running this card just because it is so good. 1 cost event plus 4,000 power to a leader or character. You're going to have to return 2 Dawn from your field to your deck, which is a little steep, and then you also trash a card. But in exchange for that, you do get to draw 2 cards. So not only are you giving a character or leader plus 4,000 power, you're going to draw into some more cards that could potentially have counter as well, or give you the answers to respond to your opponent next turn. This has definitely got to be a 4 for me. If you're not playing this card, I will call you crazy. TO8 Linlin and starter deck 4 Kaido are both good options as substitutes in this deck. I'm not exactly sure what I would take out, but I don't think you could go wrong if you're playing these as well. Queen is also a good choice, just a strong 5 cost 6,000 power blocker that allows you to draw 2, trash 1, setting up your trash for a potential Gecko play. And then last but not least, we do have the Kaido Linlin 10 drop. I haven't tested this card out yet, but wow, it would be cool to ramp into this and then wreak havoc. I can't guarantee you that this card would actually be any good and be practical at all, but if you test it out, let me know how it goes. Before we get into the gameplay, of course I have a giveaway for you. In almost every single video, we do a giveaway on the channel, and all you have to do is 1, leave a like, and 2, leave a comment. It's that simple. In today's video, we're going to be giving away a custom purple black Luffy leader. Throw it up on Screen Editor. Boom. It is using art from the One Piece Treasure Cruise game. I am not the artist. I am not selling this. This is just a fun personal project of mine. If you want to win it, all you have to do is 1, leave a like, and 2, leave a comment. It's as simple as that. If you enjoyed the content, consider hitting that subscribe button down below as well. It helps the channel out immensely. It helps you keep up to date with the content, and it makes me feel good. So if you enjoyed the content, consider hitting that subscribe button. We're almost at 1,000. My girlfriend says we have to get to 1,000 by the end of the month, or she's kicking me out of the apartment. So consider hitting it. That's enough of me yapping. So roll the gameplay, editor. Our first game of the day is against a mono purple Luffy leader. We are going to be able to choose the turn order, and we are going to steal first from them. Not only do they want to go first, we want to go first too. Unfortunately, our opening hand is very mid. Maybe mid's a strong word, as we do have some of our big bodies that we like to see. But unfortunately, we don't have our 3-cost Zoro or our 1-cost Trafalgar Law Searcher to kind of sustain us in the early game. Oh, just right on target. We do get the Voronoa Zoro. God's timing is always right. Now we're going to do his ability, return 2 Dawn. Then we get to ramp 2, well, technically 3. Ladies and gentlemen, this ability is hard to track sometimes. We're going to play down the Zoro. We're going to swing 7,000. They're going to take that, and we'll pass it to them. I really like the spot we're in. Now Zoro with our leader ability is a 4-cost character. Not that they really could interact with it anyway this turn, but for future note, that is a really good ability in certain matchups. We are going to take the first swing, and we get the Gum Gum Giant, which is a great card to have. They play down the Zoro Joro and pass to us. They found the secret rare monkey D Luffy with their Zoro Joro search, so I need to keep that in mind. They're going to counter out of our Zoro swing, and now we are going to swing 6,000 into them. Then we've got the 5-drop Sanji to play to KO their Zoro Joro. Playing this on curve feels so nice. And it's especially good in this matchup where they could have a Zoro Joro or a Bond Clay that could potentially get them a lot of value. They're going to use leader ability and ramp to 7, starting off with a 5,000 swing into my Zoro. I am going to counter this. I think I have to give them the only 2k counter in my hand, which is a Black Maria, but I really wanted to keep that Zoro alive. They are going to go with the Luffy Taro play, which is to be expected, and then off the Luffy Taro, they do play Sangoro. I'm even going to consider playing down my own 5-cost Sanji just to get rid of this Sangoro, because I do think it is just such a strong character. I could play the Gecko Moria, but I have nothing in my trash worth using the Gecko Moria for, so that feels kind of bad. That is one thing with this deck, is that you don't always have the pieces you need in your trash to really maximize the value of a Gecko Moria play. So yeah, I mean, a Gecko is still a Gecko, but a Black Maria doesn't really do us a lot of good right here. Swinging 6,000 with our Sanji into their life. They either got to give me 2k of counter or take this. They give me the Uso Hachi. I am happy to get that out of their hand. Now I'm thinking I'm going to swing 7,000, which is an attack they'll likely take. Leave one Don up for Gum Gum Giant, and then play down the Sanji to pop their Sangoro. I think that's a really good spot for us to be in. The Gum Gum Giant will also be really crucial in potentially keeping some of our board alive, especially that 5-cost Sanji, 6,000 power. I would really like for that to stay alive going into my next turn, and I think I should be able to do it unless they just throw a crazy amount of Don on Luffy Taro and swing into it. Starting off with a 5,000 swing into our Rowena Zoro 3-cost. I am considering countering out of this, but I also don't think it would be a terrible idea just to let it go, because then I could bring it back with my Gecko Moria, hypothetically. I decide to give them the Black Maria 2k counter to keep it alive, just so I can keep the pressure on. I feel like I've done a really good job at pressuring them. They are not in an amazing situation, and so might as well put a little bit more pressure on them next turn as well. I will surprisingly, in hindsight, get rid of the 5-cost 6,000 power Sanji. I would have thought I'd use Gum Gum Giant there, but I guess not. It's not the end of the world, but I think I should have kept that Sanji on the field. For 9 down, they're going to play down the Charlotte Linlin from OP09. I absolutely love that card, and they're going to put our Sanji at the bottom of our life. That's not that big of a deal. It gives us an extra life, and we're still in a pretty good spot. Now this turn, we'll probably either drop the 9-cost Secret Rare Luffy or the Gecko. I'm thinking Secret Rare Luffy, just because that is a little bit stronger, can put pressure on this turn, and allows us to draw a card. So I'm going to go with that. Returning 2 Don using his ability, we draw into the 10-cost Gear 5 Luffy, which is an interesting opportunity for potentially next turn or when we decide to go for lethal. For the rest of the turn, I'm just going to put pressure on their life, going 6,000 with leader into their life. I imagine they'll counter out of this if they have the counter to do so, and they will. They'll give me the 2k. Now I'm going to do 10,000 into their life again. Now, I am tempted to swing into the Luffy Taro, but I think swinging into their life is the better idea. I have the Gear 5 Luffy this next turn, which is the perfect finisher. So I'm thinking that I should just go on in the next turn, and I will likely get the job done. Now 5,000 they're going to start off with their leader into my life. I think I'm going to take this, and we do get the Frankie blocker, which is a 1k countered, which is good to note. Now they're going to swing 8,000 into our leader again. I'm going to take this as well. I really want to keep my Secret Rare Luffy alive. Now, with 10 Don, they are going to swing 9,000, and here's where I'm like, okay, maybe I should stop taking life so generously. I'm thinking maybe they play the Gear 5 Luffy or something. I don't know if it's really that big of a deal or if I'm just overthinking it, but I will give them the Gum Gum Giant, trash a Gecko from my hand, and draw 2. We do draw into an Uso Hachi 2k, which is great, and then another Gear 5 Luffy, which is unnecessary, but hey, the more the merrier. They will play down another 9-drop Linlin. That is definitely annoying, but I think we still may be able to go for game here. They're going to put the Zoro at the bottom of my life. Now I'm thinking I swing 10,000 into lead with our Secret Rare Luffy first, or maybe I go into Luffy Taro and play it a little bit conservatively. Nah, I think we go into lead and really just go for it here. We have a lot of counter in our hand, so hypothetically, if we don't get lethal here, we could likely stay alive next turn. 10,000 at them. They are going to use Gum Gum Giant, look for some cards. They do find the 2k Sanji to give me that as well. Now it's time for Gear 5. This Gear 5 works very nice with Black Purple Luffy. We're able to get 2 Don off of our leader ability, then another Don with the 10-drop Luffy. Now we're going to swing 6,000 into their life. This is likely GG's here. They will give me the 2k then, but we can just go big with our Black Purple Luffy leader and then big with our Gear 5 Luffy. It'll be 10,000 with our leader, which hypothetically they could get out of, which would be very awkward. And then we'll go 12,000 with Gear 5 Luffy, and that gets the job done. GG's. Our next matchup is against a blue Dofi, debatably the best deck in this current format. This matchup is definitely a little bit intimidating. As you're only a 4-life leader, they are able to pressure you pretty quickly. A Gecko Moria at least can be very helpful, comboing that with a Frankie or a Onami blocker. There's a lot of potential there to help you stabilize and establish a big body and kind of fight back, but they are able to move so quickly sometimes that it feels like there's nothing you can do. They're going to play the Perona and sort the top of their deck and pass it back to me. 3 Don for me to work with. This is definitely going to be a Zoro play. Between Zoro's ability and our leader's ability, you end up plus a Don, which is great. Now we're going to swing 7,000 at their leader. They will probably take this and we will pass it back to them. I really, really hope they weren't able to find that Jinbei on that Perona stacking. They don't find the Jinbei, but they do have the bounce law. They will bounce the Perona back to their hand and bounce the Zoro back to my hand. I'm going to take that swing as well. So now I'm down to 3 life. I've got a ton of cards in hand, which is not great when you're playing Dofi because they will likely run Charlotte Pudding and set you back to 5. Unfortunately, I don't really have another choice right now. We are going to play the Zoro Joro again, so we do get to ramp. We are already at 7 Don, which is awesome. With the remaining Don, I'm considering just putting it all on leader and swinging big at that law to kind of relieve some of the pressure. Playing down that Nami or the Franosuke wouldn't have been terrible either, but I just think that I should get rid of that law and alleviate some pressure, so next turn I'm potentially only dealing with 1 swing. Unless they run Rush Usopp, you never know who's going to be that blue Dofi player to make it big and win a game off of having that Rush Usopp in their deck. They're going to give 5 Don to their leader and just swing 10,000 at me while using leader ability to play out the Edward Weevil. This I feel like is suboptimal. Like, my initial reaction is that's definitely a bad play, but at the same time, I'm not going to counter out of a 10,000 swing. They're going to put me down to 2 life, and with the way Dofi is able to swarm the board even late into the game, that can kind of be problematic. So, I don't know. My gut tells me that they definitely had a better play in their hand with that many cards, but at the same time, maybe this is the big-brained play, and I am just the small brain. Now, what does look like a small brain play is me trashing that Frankie with 1,000 counter for no reason because I didn't get out of the attack. But the reason I did that was actually so that I can play the Gecko Moria and get some more value out of it. So that is a big brain play if I say so myself. We're going to use Frankie's ability to trash 1, then draw 2. I'm questioning what I should trash, and I end up trashing the Onami blocker. I can bring that back next turn with Gecko Moria if I want to. Now I'm thinking I'm going to swing 6,000 into their Edward Weevil, try to get that off the board, even though there's no way they give it to me. If they do give it to me, then they're really playing chess and I'm just playing checkers. We're not going to swing into their life with the Zoro just because that's only going to give them more cards to use against us. We'd rather keep that Zoro standing active and swing with it later. Now, I did leave a Don up for Gum Gum Giant, but of course I'd prefer not to use it. We only have 1 2K in our hand, which is not a great feeling. For 4 Don, they're going to play down the Boa from Starter Deck 17 and sort the top cards of their deck, setting themselves up for a potential leader swing and leader ability. Maybe they didn't like what they saw with the Boa, and they're going to play down the Perona to reset top. Now, I believe with the Boa, you can just put those cards at the bottom of the deck. So if they weren't satisfied, I don't know why they didn't just put the cards they saw with Boa to the bottom of their deck. But maybe this is another big brain play, and they're going to play out a Trafalgar Law and bounce the Perona back to their hand. And they didn't want to bounce something else to their hand. Maybe. What do I know? 2 more Don on leader, and they're going to swing 8,000 at us. They will use leader ability, and I was right on the money. I saw the future. They do play down the Trafalgar Law, popping back their Perona back to their hand. Are they going to pop the Zoro? Yes, they are. Now I have a tough decision to make. Do I want to use Gum Gum Giant right now? I think that is probably the best play. Use Gum Gum Giant, trash some non-counter cards from my hand, and protect my life a little bit. We do get that Gum Gum Lightning off the draw, which is going to be very helpful in this matchup. Lets us KO a 6,000 power body, which is most of Dofi's bodies, so that's perfect. We're going to start off with a 9,000 swing into the Edward Weevil with Gecko Moria. They might even counter out of this just because they have so many cards in hand. They don't, which is good news for us. Now I'm left with a little bit of a decision to make. I actually think I could do the Gum Gum Lightning and still play Gecko Moria. That would be an interesting play. I could also Sanji and then Onami. I like that idea too. I think that Gum Gum Lightning may have been the better move there, but hey, you live and you learn. Now we're just going to do a 5,000 swing with our leader into their Law. I imagine they'll counter out of this. If they don't counter out of this, they're officially crazy. Okay, maybe that's a little harsh. They will give us the 1k counter, so that Law stays alive. Now I'm debating what else to do with my remaining Don. I'm going to do the Zoro, which in hindsight, I'm not really liking this. I am able to use the Gum Gum Lightning still and clear their board that way. And I guess developing the Zoro was good, but only having one blocker on field doesn't feel great. I have an extra Don left up for a Gum Gum Giant that I do not have. For one Don, they're going to play down a Perona. They already had the top of their deck stacked, so that was a little confusing. But once they bounced it back to hand with the Trafalgar Law, things made a lot more sense. They're going to use the Law to bounce back my Frankie, which would not have worked if I did not leave a Don up for no reason. If I attached that to my leader, Frankie would have been a 5 cost, and they would not have been able to make that play. So I guess I left Don up for Gum Gum Giant perhaps, or maybe that was just a misplay. But I think I should have added it to my leader just so that wouldn't have happened. Now they're just going to give 10 Don to their leader, and if they swing at my life, this is going to be rough. I don't imagine they're going to swing into my Gecko because that would be easily countered out of. Yes, 10,000 into my life, and I've got to take that. We do get the 7 cost Sanji, which isn't exactly what we want to see. Now, we've got to start putting a little bit of pressure on their life, and they don't have any characters to swing into, so we're going to start off with a 5,000 swing from Zoro, which they will counter. Now a 6,000 swing from Sanji. Will they counter this one or take it? They will give us the 2k. We're slowly getting cards out of their hand. Now I'm debating on what to do next. I'm going to play down the 7 cost Sanji to return some Don and rest their Law. Now I'm going to be able to hopefully clear that Law unless they have a crazy amount of counter in hand. We're first going to swing 7,000 with the Sanji, which they'll let it go. Then we'll do 5,000 with our leader into their life, which is an easy 1k counter for them. Now I'm debating, I'm going to swing first with our Gecko Moria, 9,000 into them. They'll take that, and then I'll play down the Onami blocker. We'll trash a Gecko because at this point I don't think I need it, and then we draw into 2Ks. That is awesome. Now, it was really important that I swing first with Gecko before playing down the Onami, because if they had a Gravity Blade Raging Tiger, they would have been able to bottom deck the Onami. So sequencing is so important in this game. If you've made it this far in the video, if you can take one thing away in this video, it's just sequencing is so important. Then I will have considered this video a success if you've learned just that. For 4 Don, they're going to play down the Boa Hancock. They are going to put cards at the top of their deck and set the order. They give 1 rested Don to their leader. We will likely see another leader swing. They really haven't been able to spam Jinbeis out, so I think soon we'll probably start seeing those, is what I would expect. Unfortunately, they do have the pudding, which hurts a lot. We had an amazing hand. We finally kind of stacked up some 2k counters and some big bodies, but this new hand isn't terrible either. We have the Gecko Moria. We have the 1 cost Law Searcher to find some of our other big bodies that will be helpful. And I'm going to block with our Onami with their leader swing just because that Onami could be easily bounced back to our hand next turn, and so I'd rather get some value out of it. Now we're going to start off our turn by swinging 9,000 into the Edward Weevil with Gecko. Technically, I could have started with smaller numbers like either of my Sanjis, but I just really wanted to get it off the board, and starting off with the Gecko swing makes that most likely to happen. Now we're going to swing 5,000 with Zoro, also tempting them to block with the Boa Hancock, just so that we could swing into it with our Sanjis. Right now, they do have 3 characters on board, and we are only at 1 life, so we might have to block her up this turn. Gecko into Onami or Gecko into Frankie will likely be the play, or we could do just Onami herself and not do the Gecko. They're going to counter out of these swings into life. Now we're going to swing 7,000 with our other Sanji. I imagine they will take this, and they do. We're going to do the 1-cost Law Searcher, see what we can find, and we are actually going to take, I think the Sanji is our best bet here. This will allow us to pop their Boa and then also establish our Onami blocker. We're going to play that down, pop the Boa, swing 5,000 at their leader. I'd think they'd counter out of this, but they don't. They take it. And alas, they were able to see the future because they got a Gravity Blade Raging Tiger trigger. This will allow them to bottom deck my 5-cost Sanji that I just played. This isn't the end of the world though. I don't think it's going to be game changing really. We still play down the Onami, which we're happy that we had that Onami in hand because otherwise we would be in an awkward situation. And we get the Bond Clay and the Gum Gum Giant off of her. Now, they're going to play down the Jinbei Weevil, and I don't think this is the biggest deal. I do think that a Law bouncing back our Onami to hand would be a little bit awkward, but we've got such a wide board right now that unless they really block her up, I think that we're going to be in a really good shape to go for game next turn. And then they just kind of realized that I definitely have game next turn as long as I don't swing like a ding-dong, and they just concede there. GG's. On to the next one, and now we've got a game against OP09 Red Shanks, one of the best leaders in the game right now, just won a Treasure Cup. We are going to mulligan our first hand, and we find a great second hand. We've got that Roronoa Zoro to help us ramp, then we've got a Gecko Moria to bring back the Zoro when it inevitably dies. They're going to start out with a turn 1 Uta play. They are on the even curve. They are going to find the Hongo 2K, which is a very nice 2K for them to find. We are going to play down the Zoro. We get to ramp some Dawn. Now we have 2 active Dawn, which allows us to swing 7,000 at them, which is really helpful early on in the game to be able to apply some pressure to Shanks. Being able to establish a 3-cost 5,000 power body and swing 7,000 on turn 2 is one of the reasons I really like playing this leader. It's just so fun and does things so unique compared to other leaders. They're going to play down the Lucky Roo and swing 5,000 at us. We'll take the 5,000 hit. We don't necessarily have a lot of counter in our hand, just 1 2K Black Maria. This Lucky Roo is going to be annoying, and I've got to warn you, this turn is full of misplays, ladies and gentlemen. It's getting late. I'm getting worn down. I'm not at my peak mental capacity. We're going to start off with a 5,000 swing from our Zoro. They just use leader ability, so they don't have to counter. They don't have to block with Lucky Roo. Now I'm going to swing 6,000. I am expecting them to block this and then KO my Zoro with the Lucky Roo's ability, but they do not. I consider playing the Sanji to pop the Lucky Roo, but they can just pop the Sanji right back with the Lucky Roo, and so that feels bad. I guess my best option here is to establish another Roronoa Zoro, which isn't a terrible play. It's going to help me ramp. But if I was going to do this, I would have had extra Dawn to use and apply to my characters. So I would have been able to swing more and apply better pressure. So this was definitely a fumbled turn for me. Leaving 4 Dawn up after that and not really having any use for them is absolutely disgusting. And I am embarrassed, ladies and gentlemen. But it is fine. You live and you learn. We'll pass it back to them for 6 Dawn. Shanks doesn't really have any crazy plays. They'll play down the Yasab for 5, power up their leader to 1,000, and then they'll probably swing into my Zoro. I imagine 6,000 into the rested Zoro. I will let that die because I want to bring it back next turn with Gecko Moria. We draw another Gecko. That is not great. Our hand is not looking good right now. I also wonder if I should play the Sanji and pop the Yasab, but really that's not the best play. I really should develop a big body like Gecko this turn. If they start to drop a Rayleigh or play a Ben Beckman, they'll easily be able to remove the Sanji. We'll do the Gecko into Zoro play, which allows us to basically restand some Don, which is very nice. I decide not to swing into them with my leader this turn. The reason I do that is because with their Lucky Roo, if they block with it, they could KO my active Zoro, and then this turn they're easily going to be able to remove my rested Zoro, and I didn't want to lose both bodies. For 8, they're going to play the Dragon, put 2 rested Don on their leader, and swing 7,000 in my rested Zoro. Of course, I'm going to give them that. Then they're going to swing 9,000 with Dragon, which I'll let hit as well. It was interesting that they swung with Dragon before Yasab, but that's just the way they're rolling. We do counter out of the Yasab swing, though, because we do not want to go too far lower in life if possible to avoid it. We're going to start off with a 5,000 swing from our Zoro. It can be KO'd with a Lucky Roo block, so I'm kind of waiting for that to happen at any moment. To deal with this swing, though, they will just use leader ability to lower the power of my Zoro. Now we're going to do 9,000 at Yasab with our Gecko Moria, just trying to clear their board a little bit and relieve some pressure. The Yasab dies, which is great news. Now I'm thinking of swinging 7,000 into their life. This might be where they block with Lucky Roo. I don't know. I've said that a couple times this video. But third time is the charm. They'll block with Lucky Roo, KOing my Zoro. I've got 8 Don left. I think now's the time for another Gecko play. We'll play a Zoro off of that, which isn't really a great Gecko play. That's one thing with this leader is I feel like your Gecko plays aren't always amazing. But with the Zoro, we are able to set 2 Don as active, which means we could hypothetically play 2 Gum Gum Giants this turn. I think we're in a decent spot considering that, but our opponent has so many cards in our hand. A Dragon on board with 10 Don open. They could play a 10 cost Shanks that lowers the power of all my characters by 1,000, and once your opponent does that, it feels really hard to come back from. They're going to start their turn with a 5,000 swing into me, and I don't even have a 1 or 2k to get out of this with. I only have Gum Gum Giants in my hand, and it would feel really bad to use it on a 5,000 swing. So I'm thinking maybe I don't use them right here, but at the same time, man, I'm just in a lose-lose situation, aren't I? I decide to use it and just hope for the best. Hopefully I can filter out my hand a little bit and draw into some counter. We are going to trash the Gecko. We draw into 2 2Ks, which is great news. But at the same time, now our opponent knows that our hand is probably not in a great state if we felt the need to use a Gum Gum Giant on a 5,000 swing. Now they're going to swing 9,000 again into me, and I'm tempted to do another Gum Gum Giant, but I'll just take that. They might play a 10 cost Shanks here. They could have other plans. They do drop the 10 cost Rush Shanks, swing 12,000 into the Gecko Moria. I'm debating on keeping this Gecko alive, and I think I should. I think this would be a good time to do another Gum Gum Giant. I'm thinking about what I could do next turn that would put me in a better position if I let this Gecko go. And we're just going to use Gum Gum Giant, save the Gecko. Unfortunately, we're still going to be in a rough spot. I'm thinking here I give him the Bon Clay to help that Gecko survive, but I don't know how much I can really do from this point. I'll start off with a 5,000 swing into their leader, which they'll likely just use leader ability to make 4,000. Yes, they do. Now I can play another Gecko, but that does not really help me survive next turn. I'm just going to start swinging at lead and kind of hope for the best. 8,000 with one Gecko. Now we can do another 8,000 with my other Gecko. Before I swing with my other Gecko, though, I do decide to do a Law Surge and find the Frankie. This blocker will be pretty helpful here, and I actually get a Onami off the Frankie as well. So we actually found ourselves in a decent defensive position to where we might actually survive a turn. Maybe, I don't know. We get the Gum Gum Giant, but we don't have any Don to use it, which is a little bit tragic. They're going to start their turn with a 9,000 swing from Dragon. I could counter out of this, but I am actually going to block. I think in hindsight, maybe blocking was the wrong choice, and maybe I should have countered. I'm not exactly sure. If they go all in to win here, then and I stay alive, then maybe I have a chance to win on the clapback. But if they play defensively, maybe set up a blocker and leave Don up for some events, I don't think there's any way I'm going to be able to beat them. they're going to pull off a little bit of an interesting combination here to take care of my Gecko Moria. The Otama and the Ben Beckman combination, along with the Shanks giving my Gecko minus 1,000, allows them to clear one of my Geckos. Now they're going to swing 12,000 into my other Gecko that is currently in 8,000 power because of Shanks' ability. I can counter out of this. I think that is probably my best bet. Now, blocking wouldn't be the worst idea either, I don't think. Right now, it kind of feels like the illusion of choice. No matter what I do, I don't think I'm going to be able to win this game. We're going to do a block with Frankie just so that I'll be able to swing into their life with Gecko Moria this next turn. And then I think I just have to risk it all and do 10 cost Gear 5 Luffy. We're going to start off with our 8,000 power Gecko swing. They'll take that hit and in the process give my leader minus 1,000 power. Now it's time to do the Hail Mary. Throw down the 10 drop Gear 5 Luffy, swing 5,000 at them with my leader. It would have been 6 if they did not use leader ability. Do they have 1k encounter? Of course they do. Now it's time for just a giant swing with our Luffy, 15,000 at them. We left one down up for our leader to use. Now this is the moment of truth though. They will use leader ability on my leader. That's not a great sign. That tells me that they don't need it for this swing. They've got a Radical Beam. They've got a couple of 2Ks. They got another 2K. Then they've got the 1K Lucky Roo. Now it's all up to a 5,000 swing for my leader. And the moment of truth, they do have the 1K counter. And would you look at that? We were just 1K short. GG's. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for you today. What did you think about that video? That Shanks game at the end was so close. We lost by only 1,000 counter. So tragic, but a great game nonetheless. We really battled back. I did not really feel like we were in a great position that game. If you have any other leader suggestions, let me know in the comments down below. If you've made it this far in the video, you are a real one, and I appreciate you. Consider hitting that subscribe button if you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing on the channel. We got a lot of content coming for you that I think you will enjoy. To enter the custom leader giveaway, all you got to do is 1, leave a like, 2, leave a comment. This has been a Johnny TCG video. You're tired of me yapping. I'm tired of me yapping. Adios.